Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Friday, TGIF, April 25th, the year of our Lord 2025, 42525. And this is JC Shurburtt, and welcome into this morning's episode of Coffee. Want to apologize to all our listeners yesterday of Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show, and Inside the Gamecocks, the show. Kind of a crazy day. We had a great super stream lined up. We had Derek Scott, we had G.A. Mangus. Got those two interviews in. And then Phil and I had some things planned, and Alex Jones for Gamecock Smorgasbord. We got that one in too. But in the middle of the Mangus interview, unfortunately, we stream these out of the home studios, and there's a power outage in Jamie Bradford's neighborhood. So I jumped in from the morning show and did the Bradford or the Mangus interview. Great interview. It's up on our YouTube page if you want to go check that out with the former Gamecocks quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator. He's now training future NFL players and was on his way to play a little golf. So, GA, great guy, great interview. A lot of insight, a lot of good stuff on Lenore Sellers, a lot of good stuff on the draft, NIL, all the topics that we talk about every day. And certainly a lot of perspective there. And then we get off with Alex after his interview on the show portion and the streaming platform we stream the show on, StreamYard. We do it live. We do it live. It just conked out on us, and you can't restart it. Once you end a live stream, you have to do another one. So if you're wondering why the podcast versions yesterday were just 3 hours and 15 minutes and one big episode, that's why. And that's why those of you that are loyal listeners live every day, it got cut short. But back in the high life again today, and everything's fine. The problem with the streaming platform, folks, is not something that it was man made, self inflicted. And it's just somebody, not Phil or myself, somebody else hit a button, and they weren't supposed to have access, and so that's sort of what happens there. Uh, all is forgiven, all is fine, but that's why there was a delay yesterday. And Coffee's getting up a little late today because I was up watching the draft and hit my alarm snooze button one too many times this morning, and then it didn't come back on, and so I'm just getting going, but we will have an episode. Of course, sort of disappointing yesterday. Nick Eamon did not go in the first round of the draft. It was sort of a weird draft, just to be honest. And I think that, last year, all the hullabaloo about the quarterbacks and everybody kept talking about the quarterbacks. And, Spencer Rattler was in the later round conversation. So we all paid closer attention to that. And then this year, seems like everybody wants to talk about Shedeur Sanders, who also did not go in the first round. Jackson Dart did to the New York Giants, who traded up to get that spot. But and shout out to Mike Morgan for calling that Cam Ward the number one overall pick at quarterback. But a lot of linemen. The Bears took what a lot of people consider to be the second best tight end at number 9 in Loveland from Michigan, originally from Idaho. So there's that. The Panthers take McMillan from Arizona at wide receiver, so another receiver for Bryce Young to throw to, joining Xavier Legette and the others. And then the Falcons ended up trading back into the first round. Their first pick, they took Jalon Carter from Georgia, and then they went and took James Pierce from Tennessee. So they decided, I think, this year that we're going to try to have a pass rush. So we'll see sort of how all that goes. So yeah, pretty good, pretty good, entertaining draft as far as some of the trades and stuff goes. I just don't know that there's a lot of star power in the in this draft compared to maybe some others. I do think, I do think this. I do think the next 5 rounds are going to be I think there's a lot of good players in the later rounds. I think I just don't think it's a top heavy draft. Like, in other words, you know, the first rounders are the first rounders, but there's probably going to be a lot of good players that come out of the later rounds as well. Just sort of looking at the guys that didn't get picked. Every franchise has different needs and all that good stuff. So we'll see what happens. The Jaguars actually traded up to get Travis Hunter. I thought they gave away way too much. I love Travis Hunter. But as far as him translating to the NFL and, if he's a receiver, he's a slot receiver. I don't think you break the bank to get a slot receiver. If he's a corner, he better be Patrick Peterson-esque lockdown good, a little smaller than Patrick Peterson. I was happy for him, though. I mean, I think Travis Hunter's one that's deserving of respect with so much disrespect for the sport by a lot of players at the college level. Travis Hunter went out and played the game the right way on both sides of the ball and accomplished something that nobody else has done really in the modern era. Certainly deserve the Heisman and all that good stuff. So we'll continue to track the draft later today. South Carolina, we mentioned Nick Imaware. I think TJ Sanders could go today. Kyle Kennard could go today. Demetrius Knight Jr. as well. So it could be a big day for the Gamecocks as they look to set a draft record. You always want to get a first rounder, obviously, and Nick was close. I don't expect him to last too long today, but the Ravens went with Malachi Starks. Talking to Mike Morgan, and he's a safety out of Georgia. They were considered kind of the top two safeties. And they mentioned this. Malachi Starks sort of plays safety like he plays corner. Nick Saban said last night that Kirby Smart told him that he was the only one in practice that could cover Brock Bowers when he was there. I like Malachi Starks too, and I think if you're just looking for a guy that can play safety like he plays corner, maybe that's not Nick. I mean, Nick can cover guys, but Nick's more of the freaky guy. So we'll see what happens. See what happens moving forward with the Gamecock draftees later today. But certainly enjoyed the draft. It's just, my stepson's a Bears fan, so I kind of pull for the Bears, with the family and all that. Very puzzling pick, but Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles are not exactly people that are high up on my list of, man, they make a lot of good decisions. I'll never forgive Karen Warren. That would be a new nickname, right? Kevin Warren for trying to cancel unilaterally. Like he made the decision. He's like, hey, we're just going to cancel all of college football. I bet the Pac-12 felt stupid for following Big Brother along, considering the absolute shank they got from that league later. But I digress. And he got out of the Big Ten, and now he's the president of the Bears. And I don't know. They were very blessed to have the draft set up. They did look like polls, and those guys were going to make just tons of great decisions. And I just don't see it, man. I don't. Maybe the new coach really likes this tight end. I think a lot of fans thought, and it's kind of funny. NFL fans are a lot like Gamecock fans, college fans. You kind of look at some of the comments on social media and stuff, and Bears fans. I'll tell you this, Gamecocks. If you think you're tortured, try multiplying your ranks by about 3. There's millions of Bears fans, and then your misery index by about 16. And then instead of getting to go play golf in February and having wonderful, beautiful beaches, most of you, that live in the state, and loving the mountains and all the benefits of living in South Carolina, having low cost of living, weather, people, you're in the middle of one of the most chaotic, beautiful at times, and certainly not all bad, but one of the most chaotic, bad weather, taxed to death, hustle bustle, dirty, corrupt, miserable places to live for the most part. It's not all bad. I mean, I'm still here, obviously, because of my wife, but on the planet, and your football team is franchise complete that you love. These people go, and I mean, they love the Bear. They're very loyal, just like Gamecocks. and it's just happened. I mean, and it just they can't get out of their own way. Still living in 1985, or yeah, the one year Rex Grossman got them to the Super Bowl. But it's very interesting, the parallels between the two. Um, Gamecocks and the Bears. And After living the Bears experience for a little bit, I've realized that I'll take the Gamecocks every day and twice on Sunday as far as the misery index goes. But enough about that. Yes, draft starts cranks back up today. Rounds 2 and 3, and then 4 through 7 tomorrow. I think the Gamecocks will have a pretty good go of it. Yeah, baseball tonight. Stuart Lake will be on, I believe, with Jamie later today on the morning show to preview the Kentucky series. And this series, in my opinion, it, it's it's getting late, and so if this team is going to make any kind of run at all, I hate to say you need a sweep. You got to sweep somebody, but and that's a tall task because Kentucky's good and Carolina never plays well up there. They can hit, they can pitch a little. They just won 2 of 3 at Tennessee. I you know, hope for the best, but um, and then hey, I think under normal circumstances, if Carolina had won some of the games they should have won, um, you'd say, okay, you lose 2 or 3, you're still good. Just don't get swept or whatever. But series win probably really because that puts you with 6 and 15 in the league. You really need to get to 13 wins historically. Now, like in basketball, when the league went to 16 teams, obviously it was a historic year in basketball, but 14 teams got in. So, what's that going to look like? If you do, maybe you have 12 wins and one in the tournament and you still get in. Who knows? But I think the clock is a ticking, and if they come back from Lexington 5 and 16 or 4 and 17, I just chances are very slim. I mean, you have Florida at home. I think that's pretty reasonable. But then Auburn's good, and you got to go down there, and then LSU comes in for the last. And LSU's obviously a power and outstanding. So we'll track it and see what happens. I'm still going to tune in 6:30 p.m. on SEC Network Plus. Softball, speaking of Auburn, is at Auburn, 6 p.m. SEC Network Plus tonight. Is that team is winning, 35-11 and looking good. They were off all week because the Winthrop game got canceled. So we'll see sort of what happens. So the transfer portal in college football is closing today. I kind of talked yesterday a little bit about the edge position, or a lot about the edge position, and sort of stepped in a little bit by being a little non-committal about JT Gear. And I want to go back and address that real quick. Not going to spend a lot of time on it, but um, after Cam Pringle got in the portal, there were kind of rumors about both of them, and they were just rumors, right? And rumors can go a number of directions when you're dealing with this stuff. But I didn't want to sit here and unequivocally say and talk about a guy if there's any chance at all that by the time lunchtime gets here, he's in the portal. Um, I think the rumors were probably just that, but after doing some digging yesterday, it's JT's coming. I mean, he'll be at Carolina next year. So that's good. That's big for that room. Another experienced guy that has started and played. I think you look at the numbers now after adding Clowney and Wilson. You're going to have to kind of replace Kyle Kennard in the aggregate, or have a guy have a Kyle Kennard type of breakthrough. I don't about the two newish guys, Clowney and Wilson. I don't know that there's time. Maybe there is. I mean, if you can put 15 pounds on George Wilson, he's a really good pass rusher, and that's the thing about those guys. They're good pass rushers. My concern, the more I think about it, is what Kyle was able to do against the run, in addition to being a sack master. He was really good, and so setting the edge and all that, because you kind of look and there's some light guys over there. Can Desmond do it? Can JT do it? Yeah, I hope so. I think Desmond and JT are those guys that are the first batters up, and you do have Brian Thomas Jr. there too. So those three are the first up at the plate to try to replace it. I think Clowney and Wilson and Addison as a true freshman, maybe even Dodd are more depth pieces and rotational guys at this point. Things can change over the summer. So yeah, so your edge room is pretty much set. Still searching for a defensive tackle. I know we've talked about Pikes from Georgia Southern in a little bit. I can tell you UGA is all over that guy too. I think he's a Georgia kid. Gonna be tough to pull that one, but I'm sure they're still working on it. And a reminder, just because the portal closes today, that just kind of locks the talent pool, right? So in other words, everybody who's in, you can still recruit them. They can sign, they can visit. I've got some visits to talk about here soon. Um, and so it's not over as far as the quest for players. What's over is players' ability to jump in the transfer portal. Now, here's a little twist. Um, it never, I'm going to learn to never count out the Gamecocks in the transfer portal taking an offensive lineman or two. And just like, in the first portal window, when I was like, man, they've recruited really well. They're out of high school. They're taking three guys. I was like, wow, that's interesting. And immediately my brain and everybody else's brain goes to, well, what's wrong with the guys you got? Well, here's what's dumb about my initial thought process, right? It's numbers, and I've known that. You want to carry 15 minimum on your roster in college offensive line. Those guys get hurt, they struggle with injuries, they get banged up. You want depth. We saw quite well 2 years ago what happens when you don't have depth on the offensive line, and you want to ward against that. They did have depth last year. I mean, I thought Trovon Ball played a whole lot. Tree, I've mentioned he got to redshirt, but he saved the day a couple of times filling in. But you always want to make sure you're pondering the what ifs on the offensive line, which is weird to say because that's a position that does not substitute during games a whole lot. So unlike wanting depth on defense where you're constantly rotating, stealing snaps, keeping your guys fresh for the fourth quarter, on offense, it's just the nature of the position and the drop off when you lose a starter, and you don't. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, Notre Dame last year, I remember, and this kid, the true freshman that ended up coming in and starting, ended up being a freshman All American. He and Josiah Thompson were probably, and I think there's another guy at Colorado too, three of the best freshman offensive linemen in the country. Um, but he was a three-star kid out of Georgia, and so going into A&M against that defensive line, they were really worried because their starter went down and with a knee injury, season ending in fall camp, and the guy started all year and played for the national championship. Uh, but it's a big deal. That's what everybody was talking about leading up to that Notre Dame Texas A&M game last year, and yeah, South Carolina, same thing. So you want to make sure your numbers are right. So why? Yeah. So here's the news. There's two transfer portal offensive linemen. Nolan Hay from Incarnate Word. He played 1,000 snaps in 16 games last year. 6'4", 300. From Katy, Texas. He's a right tackle. Visit set up here in a couple of weeks in May. South Carolina, Washington State, Colorado. He's in the transfer portal. And then another report yesterday, Will Osteen from Jacksonville State. He 6'4", 295 from Anniston, Alabama originally. West Virginia, where his former coach is now, they lost 30 players to the portal, so they need him. North Carolina, South Carolina, for him. So why are the Gamecocks targeting offensive linemen? Because this is going to be that position's scrutinized, and it should be because it's important. Uh, you know, there's a lot of I'll believe it when I see it I do still think there's a lot of unrealistic expectations up there at every SEC school. Um, but it is, one that we want to talk about. I mean, if you have a year on the offensive line this year like you did last year, things are not going to be as good as they could be. We'll just put it that way. So think about this. You've had two because Ja'Kai Moore and quarterback Dante Reno went in the portal recently. I don't think we've mentioned that here on Coffee. Ja'Kai Moore, of course, seventh year guy, probably looking to go play. And I wish him the best. I love Ja'Kai Moore. I think he's a tremendous individual. He's been through a lot lately with the loss of a parent that was in his friend Vershawn Lee lost his dad this past year, and I think the world of those two players. I mean, I got to know them at the chicken wing eating contest. They both were the champions. So Ja'Kai, you'll miss him. He's had some injuries through his career. This is a guy that made his first career start in the 2019 Clemson game, and he picked Carolina over Clemson and Penn State out of recruiting. He's from Virginia. Uh, just he's been in and out of the lineup. He's had injuries. He's played. He's not played. He's had a great attitude and shown leadership the whole time. If he can go someplace and play, great. But he's in the portal, and he started with 15. Okay, so portal for Ja'Kai, so that takes you to 14. Cam Pringle in the portal, that takes you to 13. Ryan Brubaker is out for the year. That takes you to 12. Of those 12, two are true freshmen, Shed Surratt, who had a great spring, and then Damola Ajadan, who sat out the spring. So that gets you down to 10. So that's 2 units, basically. There's no third team as far as scholarship guys go. On top of that, Nick Sharp, the transfer from Wake Forest, missed the whole spring. So there's that. I mean, I believe he's supposed to make it back, but they shut him down the whole spring. And then Case and Henry missed like the last half of spring. And of course, we know his injury issues. So if you're Darren Usher and Shane Beamer and Lonnie Teasley and Greg Atkins, and you're sitting there going, well, this is what it looks like if you have 2 injuries. And that means there's 8 guys. That's not a lot of competition. That's not a lot of depth. If you have more than that, you kind of start to get really. So yeah, you're going to look for more offensive linemen. Because like I said, it's ideal to carry 15. Now, as far as the starters go, if they remain healthy and all that all year, which you can't say that because Case and Henry is the starting right tackle. As far as that goes, I think they'd be fine because there's enough talent there, but there's not enough depth. And so, maybe, and I don't know, Will Osteen may want to go to North Carolina. He may want to go reunite with Rich Rod. I mean, Anniston, Alabama's in northern Alabama down I-20 on the way to Birmingham from Atlanta, Columbia. So I think Carolina's closer than those schools. It's also the only SEC school. If you grow up in Alabama, SEC means something. And then, Nolan Hay, does he want to go play for Sanders and all that? Washington State is obviously in need of players. And then the Gamecocks. He's from Incarnate Word, which was where Cameron Ward started his career, the number 1 pick in the draft. So that's why they're going after some offensive linemen all of a sudden. That wasn't on the radar, but things happen. That's the beauty of having a second portal period in a positive way, is that, hey, man, maybe you can go get somebody to fill the gap. Both these guys play tackle. I think they're good on interior guys, but if even with, because Pringle could have been a backup tackle, but even with, if, you got Tree inside starting, you're probably, if you lose one of those guys, maybe move Tree out there. Jatavius Shivers is a tackle. Other than that, you're still thin at that spot because Demolaz, unless Sat Surratt may be a tackle. I mean, he's good enough to do that, but he's a true freshman. So you don't, you want to restock your positions, and these guys, like I said, they played tackle, um, and come in for depth purposes. They've played football a lot at the college level. I would think that's what you want. Do I see either one starting if they come to Carolina? Maybe. Kind of depends on what happens with the other guys, but you don't want to take that risk, man. You just and I understand it. And around here, sometimes with Beamer and the staff, I there's a lot of never again, right? Running back. Never again will we go into the season like we did with that offensive line. Never again will we not have uh, a good situation there depth wise to where the season's not completely ruined when you have a chance to. And look, 2023, they had some offensive linemen. That team's probably 7-5, maybe 8-4. Obviously, I think there were some defensive issues and stuff. I'm not sure that it would have been a 10-win year or whatever, but and there were a lot of good teams that year on the schedule, but certainly probably wouldn't have been 5-7. Certainly wouldn't have missed a bowl. But then again, that season probably facilitated a lot of good things, if we're being honest, as far as roster and things like that. But so that's why the Gamecocks are targeting offensive linemen in the transfer portal. Like I said, the Nolan Hay, that's the kid from Incarnate Word, who's a Texan, Katy, Texas. His visit is like in May 1st, I think, and then he goes to Washington State, Colorado. And then Osteen, I don't know that we have a date on that. He's the kid from Jacksonville State, Anniston, Alabama. So we'll see if they end up adding to the offensive line room through the transfer portal second window. Still looking for a D tackle. And then that's it. I think, because I think that they've done a good job replenishing the numbers at edge. And I think that room's good to go. And it's going to be up to as I said yesterday, to replace Kyle Kennard in the aggregate, right? All right, we'll be back with Inside the Gamecocks, the show later today to wrap up your week. This is JC Shurburtt from Coffee, signing off. Holla at you soon.